You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network.
Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on.
Happy Monday. This is Mondays at the Red Wire, sponsored by our super generous Patreon supporters. I'm Jeff Wood, your host, and joined by
Tracy McMillan with Nelson Nygaard.
Awesome. Tracy, welcome back.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm happy to be back so soon since
I know.
the last time.
Yeah, we get it. If we get it in, we do it. And then it's been awesome. I've had a whole summer so far of guests every other Monday. So I've done better.
So Chrissy was on not that long ago.
Yeah, Chrissy was on a couple of weeks ago. So that was good. We're just rolling along, and I'm really happy because, you know, I like doing my individual shows, but at the same time, like, it's good to have people on to throw stuff back and forth with, because it's not just my opinions that matter. It's everybody's. And everybody has different ones. And so that's actually makes it more compelling, right? So I appreciate that.
That's very democratic of you. Yeah.
And then we also had Kate Gasparow on last time.
That's great.
Yeah. So what's been going on? What's been happening? What's up in the world of transportation and Tracy McMillan?
Well, lots of air travel and car travel. Yeah, some road trips and very busy lately.
Busy.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's just, is it summer that's busy, or is it just, I feel busy too. There's just been so much going on.
I think so. I think part of it is summer. You know, Angus is going off to college this fall, so we have some trips associated with that, and also just feeling like, we got to do stuff before. Obviously, he's not going and never coming back, but
right.
Trying to get some of that family activity in.
Yeah. I hear you on that. We've been trying to do stuff too, trying to get Cora to go do stuff, adventure things, and so going to, like, Saturday we went to my friend's house, and they have a pool, and so she finally got in the water and started, after a number of years of being too nervous to get in. She got in, and towards the end of the day you can pull her out. So that's
she's
how
like,
it goes.
what have I been doing all this time?
What have I been missing? What? Well, we try to tell her all the time. It's like one of those things where we're like, if you try it, you might like it. And so this works
we all
for
have to
swimming,
do it at our own time,
and for food, and for getting on a scooter, and all kinds of things, right? So
yeah. How old is she now?
She's 4. Yeah. 4.
Yeah.
So we gotta get in the pool and gotta get swimming. I feel like that's a rite of passage for kiddos. You gotta where I'm from, anyways. That was the thing. I was on swim team when I was little, and because we had a pool in the neighborhood, obviously. San Francisco, it's a little harder to get to pools. But and then I also lifeguarded, like, from my sophomore year of high school, I think, or junior year of high school, until, like, even through college when I was at home for the summer. So it was funny. I would go to work, and then I'd come home at like 9 p.m. and then I'd basically change clothes and then go running at like 10 or so, and then come back, eat dinner, or watch some 120 minutes on MTV, or hose myself off because it's so hot in Texas in the summer. And that was like my day, basically, going lifeguarding and then going running. So well, it's good to see you again. Thanks to everybody who's ordered their bus and bike scarves. Tracy, I know every time we talk about the Gator, it's still on my tabs, the company that does this, and so I promise I'll have it at some point. I need to upload the design.
You may uninvite me after a while because she's going to bug me about this.
She's going to bug me about the Gator, but it's on the way. And so if you'd like to order one, head on over to theoverheadwire.com or email me at theoverheadwire@gmail.com. Also, I've had a suggestion that maybe I should, like, open up the design of the new one to folks, and maybe that might be a good idea. Although, when you do design one and you have to order like 50 of them, that makes it a little bit harder to, like, pick an individual one. Maybe that might work, but maybe we'll think about that. Let's bird dog that a little bit in terms of designing a new scarf. But you can always support the show by going to patreon.com/theoverheadwire or buying books off the bookshop site, bookshop.org/shop/theoverheadwire. We've had over 100 books now that we've reviewed for the show. So those are all on Bookshop, except for maybe one of them. I think there's one book that was like an Elgar book or something like that. That just they don't. It's a academic publishing company. They don't have it, but I'll see which one that is, and then I'll try to put that one up there too, so folks can get that. But over 100 books in the Bookshop site, and then also if you want to buy any books, then we also get like a small percentage of that, maybe a 50 cents or a dollar on each order. And also Cars or Cholesterol merch is up there, bit.ly/Cars or Cholesterol. Obviously, you can get all this stuff by going to theoverheadwire.com. There's little squares on the right of the site where you can order and pick up all that stuff. We also strongly suggest folks sign up for the newsletter. This is where we get all the news articles for these Monday shows. And so if you do that, that would be really appreciated. And then finally, again, Patreon, that's the best way to support us. And if you do so for $1 a month, you don't get all the ads that come at the beginning of the show, at the middle of the show, and at the end of the show. And we'll have notes in the show notes for folks who want to sign up for that. So this is episode 194. We're live and in session. You can get this podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Overcast Podcasts, and of course, Apple Podcasts. Thanks for everybody for being podcatcher supporters, especially for the Monday show. So here we are at the news. This is the part of the show where we have some articles that piqued our interest from the newsletter that folks clicked on that we're super excited about. And so usually we take some of the top articles that are clicked on during the week and we talk about them. And then I send them to Tracy and she says, I like these best. And then we want to talk about these.
You always send great ones. It's tough to decide which ones.
I know. There's always good ones. Well, if we couldn't, I think maybe I post like 8120, like but probably 160 articles a week. So I don't think we could get to all of them in 1 hour. That would be impossible. But there are a few stories. So if you sign up for the newsletter, you can get all 180 articles that come through the newsletter. But here we'll talk about maybe 4 or 5. Shall we get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
There were some good ones this week.
Population decline and the built environment. Countries around the world are experiencing or will soon experience population decline. Blaine Brownell argues that people often talk about many reasons for this, but tend to skip over the impact of the built environment. While we design our environments for comfort, economic success, and quality of life, those same designs also impact family formation and the ability to care for them. This was by Blaine Brownell in Architect Magazine. And actually, I just talked with Blaine, and so he'll be on the Talking Headways podcast sometime in the next couple months. So we're looking forward to chatting with him about that. But first, Tracy and I are going to pick the piece apart. So I'm hoping Blaine will come on and I'm looking forward to chatting with him. But but I've noticed there's been a bit of discussion lately about birth rates and family formation and some of these things that some people want to make kind of politically expedient, and sometimes it gets gross. But what do you think about this piece specifically, about the built environment and the connection it has between our buildings, our housing, and what that means for growing communities or population growth?
It was interesting. I'll admit that you had sent me the list of articles, as you said, and which ones do you want to talk about? And I skimmed this really quickly and was like, oh, this one looks really good. I would like to discuss it. It went a little differently than I thought, because one thing I think about in terms of our family size, probably family size more than where our population growth or decline is at the moment, and in relation to architectural trends, is the idea of the nuclear family versus the extended family, and how we do not have housing really in the US to support the concept of the extended family living together. And that's really gone by the wayside for decades, right? And there are a few home builders I noticed, because I look at real estate listings way too much, way too often.
We're all the people in bed scrolling on the Zillow and the Redfin.
Exactly. But I did notice over the past many years in Arizona and the Phoenix metro region that there are some home builders who are building new homes with, whether it's they call it an ADU or an in-law suite, or the idea of the extended family architectural style. Again, they may also be doing that to say, hey, you have your Airbnb already in your house design, but I do see them marketing it as that you do have an extended family concept. And I think that is an example that wasn't in the article on how the built environment may constrain our ability to have and support families because, you don't have maybe a caregiver in the home to help with with young children. Or the flip side, you can't bring a family member back into your home when they're aging for you to be able to support them.
Yeah. The care infrastructure thing is totally interesting and an important point, and I didn't think about that actually, because I was just thinking about specifically I was reading straight like down his brainwave, which was like the built environment impacts. But you're right, there's so much of this that is tied to and family formation is one thing, but then like family continuance, I guess, is another, right? And so you have all these issues where folks can or can't, live with their families for a long extended period of times. And some people don't, but some people do want the ability to bring their family back in. In certain cultures, that's even more important than others. I remember reading a book called Zoned Out, and Jonathan Levine, I think, wrote this book. And it was like back in the 2000s. And he was talking about the zoning for Greece versus like Silicon Valley. And I don't know if you remember this book or not, but basically like Greece, you build, they have no zoning limits. Once you buy your house, you build it, and then you build floors on top of until you have enough space for your whole family, and you build it as you get more money and as your ability to build the next level of your house grows. And here in the United States, we have the zoning limits where we just are like, you can only build a single family home and that's it, and there's no way for you, and this has changed with ADU laws in California specifically, but there's no way for you to expand without just like buying another house that's bigger or somewhere else, right? So there's no like aging in place opportunity for not just your being if you're older, but just like when your family grows. Your family grows, and then you need to take care of family over time, because there is that spot in the middle where you are taking care of children and you are taking care of older adults in that instance. And as the prevalence of Alzheimer's and dementia and other ailments grows, and also just the affordability impact of everything, that need is huge, right? For the ability to bring people into the house or bring people back into the fold.
You made reference to all the discussions going on about population decline, and it is a global phenomenon. But the discourse here in the U.S. is often focused on that we need to bump up fertility. The women got to start pumping out babies,
right?
And without the discussion on what are the factors that are constraints to do so, like affordability, like childcare, or the strain of having, being that sandwiched, like you just described, that you may be caring for children, you're caring for older family members as well. And how do you also do that and have a job, and how do you afford any of that? My husband's parents passed away over the past year, and both of them had cognitive decline, Alzheimer's and dementia, and the cost of memory care was, oh my gosh,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah. It's I'm now experiencing the cost of college next, it's so all of that is, and then we're becoming, those costs are real for so many families. And if you can't afford to have a long-term care, then you're, again, like just the reality of life and the constraints and the emotions of having somebody coming maybe back into your household or caring for them while they stay in their home.
One thing that popped in my mind just now is like, if you're older, or you just, you're like me and you don't find, your partner until later in life, you bump up against your affordability level in San Francisco is crazy, right? So the problem is that if we're pushing people because it's not affordable enough, if we're pushing people to wait until later to have kids, or wait because they don't have the money to have care or whatever it is, then you're pushing them into that situation where you aren't doing it when you're younger, and so your parents are older when you are having the kids, and so you are pushing people into that sandwich as well. Like you're making them make choices that are really hard, and the choices should be much easier in that respect. So I do want to talk about Blaine's kind of paradoxes that he mentions in the article, because I think those are really interesting. He introduces several different paradoxes that come back to the built environment and supply contradictions for architects and for planners. The first one is the quality of life paradox, which is like healthier systems reduce birth rates because people don't need to have like 10 kids in order to have 5 of them survive because we're in a different, paradigm now in terms of where we are in our health ability to have healthcare that works for people. The urban opportunity paradox, which is cities provide opportunity, but they also delay family formation because people are working and they're getting into their businesses and their jobs and all those things. The density paradox, which is dense cities are efficient but currently don't really support families, and that's what you're talking about. Like we don't build housing that's like we build single unit or 2-bedroom houses, but we don't build the 3-bedroom or the 4-bedroom or the multi-generational house that's possible. Part of it is just like what people can afford and like how much development we allow, and that kind of kicks back in. And then the final one that he talks about is the amenity paradox, which is like amenities cost a lot and it makes it harder for young families to afford things, right? It's just like makes it harder for them to afford to, do things if the amenities cost a lot. But it should be, and the last one is the shrinkage paradox. Sorry, I forgot this one.
And
too.
the sustainability paradox.
Yeah. And so like population decline stresses infrastructure, but provides space and environmental opportunities. So there's that too. So there's a bunch of different things that make a lot of sense, but it all definitely is focused on like cities, what they can provide for people. And then also just kind of points to me anyways, to the fact that our cities are places where we've kind of put our investments in things rather than investments in humans. So, it's kind of like kicks us in the wrong direction. If you want to be a person who starts a family or has a family, like there's a lot of people that don't want that, and that's perfectly okay. And I support that completely because it's hard. The kids are hard. But then there's also people who want kids or want lots of kids, and then they can't have those because of the constraints of the affordability, because of the constraints of the design of the system that they're in, the housing sizes, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, a lot of different things to kind of latch onto. And I think he did a good job of like, from a built environment perspective, just kind of going through, checking off all those boxes specifically.
Yeah, I appreciate that. At the end, he said, this correlation, not causation. It's not a scientific study. We're really talking about the example of Tokyo and Japan's declining population was really the country and the community, the geography that he referred to most in the article. As an aside, I read an article yesterday or the day before on poor sleep rates in Japan, and it kind of ties to the challenge of the chasing of success and the demands of success early in life is one of the things they talked about. And then they talked about all the products that are being developed to try to help people sleep better. But
a technological solution for that, where there's a cultural
exactly.
Answer,
yeah,
right?
They didn't talk at all about like the policy or the cultural shift that may be needed to just can people not have anxiety?
Yeah.
Which is causing them to not sleep well. But it did make me think about like everything. I think there are examples of places where this is very clear. The correlation makes sense, and other locations where does the argument hold? But it's really it certainly is a good paradoxes to think about as cities and communities evolve over time, because we're constantly refreshing and re-engaging, and I know in San Francisco there for many years there's been discussion about the decline in children that live in San Francisco.
Yeah, and that I mean, I saw it. I've seen it firsthand this last year. I mean, basically, like there's families that want to stay here, but the school system is like not allowing them to stay because they are being sent to like schools that are really far away. This year they're gonna talk about reforming the system. Like this is a big thing on the list. Sometimes you're gonna get what you want and sometimes you aren't. But if you're not getting anywhere close to what you want, then people end up leaving and they'll go to the East Bay and to a place where they know, where if they live in this community, and I know this is a whole thing, but one of San Francisco's things is trying to be equitable about where kids can go to school and going, not just like, putting poverty in one part of the city versus another. But if some families are just going to pick up and move and go to a place where they know exactly what school they're going to, if they live in this neighborhood, right? They just like, They know that they're not going to have to go through a lottery that's going to maybe send them to the other side of the city and drive 45 minutes each way each day and create another issue of transportation policy. And, you know, for us specifically, like, and I don't want to get, I never really want to get too personal on the show, but for us, like, our neighborhood school is a very popular neighborhood school because there's a lot of kids that are born in this neighborhood. And one of the things about it is, like, there's a waiting list for like 200 people, kids, for just TK. And then, you know, there's also there's preferences for if you already have a sibling in school, then you get to go to the same school, which totally makes sense. But then, you know, there's also, if you want to go to Mandarin immersion, there's only 2 schools that do that. And like, so there's like all these considerations, and you can apply, like we had friends that applied for 19 schools and didn't get into a single one that they had applied, they said they might want to go to. And that just, like, you know, it kicks you out of the system, where you just get frustrated and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go to somewhere where it makes more sense. Like, the system makes more sense. And so this isn't a housing policy. This isn't like, anything. This is education policy. And so this is one of the many different little things. San Francisco real estate is very expensive. You know, we are not family friendly necessarily. The childcare situation is really expensive. Our healthcare systems are really expensive. And like, you can get on a Covered California account or whatever, but then you know, so stack everything up on top of itself. And it's like insane. And so people are like, okay, I'm going to go somewhere else, and I'm going to take my decision and go to somewhere else. And that lowers the students that are in the system. That makes it so that the state basically says every student that goes to school in the San Francisco Unified School District gets money from us. But if the student leaves, or if the student goes to private school, you don't get that money. Right. So that student-based thing is another problem. Like, we should be basically supporting education at all levels for everybody who wants to take part, and giving more money to like schools that need it. And so also, like, there's like schools that like do like tons of fundraising, and they expect to, you know, if they want extra amenities, they'll have to fundraise $200,000. And some of the schools that are already, obviously, the parents will help and do that. There's some of the well-off schools that are already ahead in that instance, and some of the not well-off schools, it's harder for them to raise that extra. Like, so it's totally unfair. So, anyways, I've been through this in the last year, you could tell, but like, it's just like really frustrating that it's not like more straightforward and more supportive of people who might want to have families. And again, I said, you know, if you don't want to, that's totally awesome and your choice. But there's a lot of people that do, and like that should be something that's also supported. Another thing I'll say is that, like, one of the things that I feel like is really frustrating about these conversations is that we talk about high growth and high wealth cities in the same breath that we talk about like kind of low growth and or population decline cities. And so you have this mismatch of places like Midwestern cities, the places in the industrial belt, I won't call it the Rust Belt, but the industrial belt, where there's decline and there's population loss. And so how do you manage that too? Like, how do you manage that infrastructure over time? And he talks about this a little bit, like in kind of in passing, but this is a discussion as well. Like, if you have these growing places, they have the benefit of the population growth, but then you also have these declining places. You have the negatives, the positives as well. There's ecological benefits to that too, from a standpoint of just like resource use and things like that. But there's also the problem with what's the guy's name that just passed away, who had a big influence on the no growth aesthetic and feeling about people like seeing humans as pollution in their own right. Anyways, there's a guy that the population bomb guy. He wrote that book, The Population Bomb. Anyways, I don't agree with that at all, but I'm just saying, like, there are positives and negatives, and there's also kind of there's ships passing in the night in terms of the discussions that are happening about declining cities and growing cities, and, you know, the distribution of wealth that goes along with that.
Yeah, and like we've talked about on previous episodes, and you know, how these topics all intersect, it also ties into the competition between cities.
Yeah.
You know, so now, you know, we're competing for a sports team, competing for businesses, which then draw in greater population, which helps your tax base. And, you know, everything is unfortunately too often framed as a competition in winners and losers, and not, you know, we don't talk about people.
That's one thing about, actually in my newsletter today, we talk about electric vehicles and how they're becoming too powerful and they're not safe because they have heavy batteries and they the motors that are needed to propel those vehicles are getting bigger, and so the vehicles are becoming faster, and it's really ridiculous. But we know, like, the people that care about that stuff, we know that it'll beat an internal combustion engine, and that's like no big deal. And it reminded me of this discussion about climbing Mount Everest. Like, people are like, oh, and you see this news all the time of like the Sherpas. There was a Sherpa recently that like fell down the mountain and came out alive, and amazingly, and they survived after being in the wilderness for like 3 days. But like the people that go up there, it's a mess up there too. Like they litter everywhere. It's like trashed, and all that stuff is horrible. It's just like it's a vanity project for these people, and they have other people carry their stuff for them. The Sherpas carry their stuff for them. It's like, that's not impressive to anybody. Like, it's like, it's a vanity project. And I feel like a lot of the kind of the competitions in that way are like these vanity projects. Like it's not, competition is healthy to a certain extent, but it's also deleterious to a certain extent, where it actually can get in the way of actually benefiting everybody. And I also say, like, in the piece that I wrote, I say like, it's actually less impressive to hike Everest, and it's more impressive to run a marathon. It's more impressive to try to run a marathon in under 4 hours or something along those lines than it is to hike Mount Everest. You're doing it by yourself, but also you're doing it with a larger community of people that are running with you, that are cheering you on, that are like that are part of the process with you. And so I feel like in this instance, we're talking about competition. Like, the competition of a marathon, trying to improve yourself and your city is one that's virtuous, whereas trying to compete against other people to say that you're the first person or you're the person that did this thing is a negative aspect of competition. And so I feel like that's kind of along the same vein of like, we don't need to have these sports teams playing cities off of each other to try to like get more for themselves, right? That because it's a vanity project for a lot of these owners that are sports teams and things like that. Whereas like running, for me, it was always a pure endeavor, because you're trying to better yourself, and you can beat other people, you can be faster than other people, but ultimately it's yourself that you're trying to improve. And so there's something about that, I feel like, that needs to be kind of fostered by cities and by the country as a whole, so that cities don't need to compete they can compete healthily against each other, but there's no need to compete that's in a way that's like zero sum and takes away resources from others. So that's kind of something that I've been thinking about.
Wait until you get into like competitive youth sports and all that.
Oh, I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, do I really want to go that direction? I had negative experiences when I was younger of like being on the travel soccer team and then getting hurt. Basically I hurt myself and got like negative feelings towards a lot of my teammates.
We talk about competition and also just the expense of families now, and all these different factors that contribute to just the cost of raising a child, whether to help them or keep up with the Joneses or whatever and it's expensive.
It is, yeah.
And don't even get me started on higher education.
I know, right now it's crazy. Oh man, when I was at UT, it seemed cheap. It seemed cheap, $8,000 a year, I think it was, when I was at UT. It seems pretty reasonable now, right? Like, that seems amazing. Now, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 later a year, insane. The last thing I want to say about this specific article is that, like, I feel like people together create value, and we're generating value by having people together in cities, and we generate decline by trying to push them away from each other, or trying to push them into the suburbs, or make people live where they may or may not want to live in a far-flung place. And so I think that, like, to the extent that we can actually improve family dynamics inside of cities, we can actually we'll be better off in the long term for it, because we will improve the ability of people to create value, get value from a place that they live. But also, just like, if this is where all the people want to go, from the rural areas of Japan to Tokyo, then it seems like Tokyo needs some improving in order to, like, have a situation where the population doesn't decline to nothing.
I feel like that's a perfect segue to the article on Dutch children.
Oh, I can go down to that one. That was my last one, but we can skip ahead. Annual walking festival. Dutch children are happy and healthy and independent. Each year, volunteers and parents hold a 4-day walking festival in which kids and parents explore neighborhoods together and gain rewards for finishing a route, though the reward is greater than the medals. This was by Hannah Dr. Loeb in The Guardian. And so this 4-day evening walk is called an avondweer dag. I am not good at Dutch. I know there's a lot of in there, and it's, my parents lived in the Netherlands for a year, and my mom just said, all you do is you can, if you just speak English with a little bit of extra, you'll get somewhere. But yeah, 4-day evening walk. I said, quote unquote, Dutch Halloween for 4 days in a row. But it's not a race, but if children compete every night, they get medals, a bouquet of flowers, and if they're lucky, a lot of sweets, which is pretty cool. What do you think about this? This made me so happy, this article.
Yeah. It was charming. I mean, certainly as we're talking about the built environment and community, knowing your place, knowing your neighbors, the importance of connectedness, and that can occur in various urban forms. I mean, let's go back to Don Appleyard's work and, the built environment in the street and in a city and the conditions of the street and how people know or don't know one another and the factors associated with it. But this, was just a really charming article. I thought, you thought Dutch Halloween. I thought like walking school bus in the evening, but I thought it was great, and it made me go, wow, if it wasn't really smoky outside right now because of the wildfire down the street, it'd be great to go out and walk. And this, walking the dog and just being able to go out and walk in your neighborhood is fantastic, and having your children do it too, so they understand all the things and have the fun and they the challenge and the connectedness. There's so many positives to it.
It seems so great. And one of the things, so it started as a military practice, and then it evolved into a children's walk, which is like kind of that's kind of a benefit in itself. It started as something that was specifically after, I believe it was World War I, when they had people coming back from the war, they would go on these walks together, and then it turned into something that even more for the community. But it seems to be only Dutch or Dutch colonies that have taken this on. But it just reminds me of like the benefits that Cora is getting, because she's able to, when her school specifically, they actually take them out in the city of San Francisco every single day to go to a different playground. And the way that they do that is they'll send them, the teachers will take them and they'll walk or take transit to any different playground in the city within like basically a 5-mile radius. Go to the farmer's market. They'll go to like different playground in Chinatown. They'll go to the library here. They'll go to, but the cool thing about that is that like, she gains a sense, and the kids gain a sense of like direction and location. They gain a sense of the place that they live. They're not stuck in the same place all day. And obviously there's some learning to do that happens like when they get back, but and it's probably not possible when you get into older grades and in liability and things like that. Although I do see kids walking around from high schools and stuff around here, but I think that's it's beneficial for the exercise that they get too, walking around. And so I've noticed actually that when sometimes she's hanging out with other kids from out of town, she seems a little bit fitter. Able to run and walk a little bit further than some of the other folks. And so I really think that like continuing that would be super beneficial. And this seems like a continuation of that kind of aesthetic and that kind of education, as it were. I really feel like the Dutch have done a really good job after the oil crisis of creating a community that's about moving that oneself by oneself, walking, biking, active transportation, and they've designed their system such in a way that allows them to do this. The one thing I did have a question about, and maybe this question for you, is that in areas like San Francisco, it might be easy to replicate this because you can create a community walk. You have neighborhoods to walk through. There's good sidewalks in urban form. But I'm wondering if you wanted to do this in like a suburb, like how would that work? Where would you go? What would you try to see? If you're only, if you're only walking a 10K, you might not get very far in terms of like accessing destinations.
Well, I mean, 10K round trip that's still 6 miles round trip.
It is a 6 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the destination is not the purpose.
I mean, that's
The
the truth.
journey is the purpose. And discovering the neighborhood, whatever the neighborhood has, is part of the exercise or the activity, is how I interpreted it. And to your point, in terms of just even learning how the neighborhood is laid out. Where can I or can't I go? Can I get to the park? Can I get to my school? Can I get to my friend's house? Where's the next neighborhood? Because it doesn't necessarily say that these are this is only happening in urban centers and
That's true. I put that
yeah,
in my brain, in my own
yeah.
brain.
And certainly, yeah, I wonder what the population size of Wester Park is. And yeah, so I guess I interpret it as being in all different urban forms. It could be possible to plan an event like this. Certainly, in some cases, it might be like a walk audit where we learn, what infrastructure isn't in place to help do this on a regular basis.
The exploration factor is really important. One thing I liked about, and I've told you this before, one thing I liked about running in Austin and being, training every day was that we learned every street within a 10-mile radius of the
Yeah.
university. And, I can still see them all in my head. The other thing that I really liked when I moved to San Francisco and doing the Chinese New Year treasure hunt is going around the city during a big event and trying to find the smallest details. Finding a plaque on the wall or even a letter in the sidewalk.
That's great.
Just like trying to see things that you wouldn't have seen if you weren't, kind of open to it. And I feel like this walk gives kids an opportunity to see parts of the city they've probably seen before if they're, if they're walking around their neighborhood already. But seeing it with their friends and seeing it in a situation where they can, show people things that they have seen or whatever it might be. There's a lot of like architectural interest or people make their houses funny in some ways, or like, the street tells you a specific story of history or whatever it may be. But I feel like there's more of that when you kind of organize around this. That's could be beneficial.
And they said they pick a different route every year even within a community. Like you're not going to walk the same streets. It's not going to be, you're running the same 5K
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah. And then it takes a lot of organization though. They said that it was, it's hard for some places to keep it up because it does take a lot of organizing and a lot of volunteers and a lot of folks getting involved to make this happen. And so, I was wondering if like how hard or easy it would be to like replicate here. Like, could you make it then maybe it doesn't have to be 4 days. Like maybe it's just like a 3 nights in a row, or maybe it's like one night where you have like national or like, city walking night or something where you devise a program. I mean, we have wine walks around here and for the Noe Valley, like the Merchants Association and stuff like that. So it's like, it's kind of the same kind of thing as that, I would say, to a certain extent. You get, instead of wine, you get candies and different Dutch treats, but you're still walking around the neighborhood trying to find interesting shops and things, or interesting things to see, or neighborhood icons, or whatever it might be, and hanging out with your friends, right? So
Yeah.
it might not be too difficult to organize. It might be difficult to continue every year or be consistent. That might be the hard part.
It'd be interesting to look at the history to know why they started, why it is a 4-day, that sounds like it's back to back 4 days in a row,
Yeah.
as opposed to like a monthly walk, first Friday monthly walk or something like that.
Right.
But that's obviously, there's different variations you could do to capture maybe the same thing, but maybe not.
I'm looking for that history because there's some stuff in the article.
It says, like you said, it came from a military training event. And then when the Second World War broke out, towns started to organize their own walks for soldiers. And then citizens joined the walk.
Original walks were necessary to promote exercise, become a way to motivate kids to enjoy being outside and moving their bodies. Encouraging children to go through the whole week of walking, rain or shine, and rewarding them at the end can help build a positive association with physical activity. So I guess it's kind of a way to kind of get you to do something in repetition, right?
Yeah.
Not just once, but in repetition.
Right.
Positive emotion that sticks is important, it says. It also helps build resilience. It's been presented to them as a big challenge because it's 5 kilometers and it sounds super hard for little kids. Even if it's raining, they do it, and the message behind it is very great for children, they say. So I think it's just kind of like an endurance thing, almost like that marathon I talked about earlier, just like, a perseverance to a certain extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Next up, let's go to, maybe we should go to car spreading. Let's do car spreading first. Car spreading across the Atlantic. Both Europe and the United States are seeing vehicle sizes increase dramatically with disastrous effects. Since 2009, pedestrian deaths have increased on American roads by 75%, and writers at the New York Times suggest that vehicle sizes have led to 400 additional deaths per year. In Europe, researchers also believe that if vehicles aren't right-sized by the year 2040, 400 additional people per year will die from collisions there too. This is by Keller et al. In the New York Times and Ajit Niranjan in The Guardian. So I found these two articles were within a day of each other, and I figured they were together, philosophically together on the same page. I also found it interesting that we've already done the embiggening of our vehicles, and we already are killing 400 people a year. And then also that's where they predict exactly 400. It's kind of in a range, but 400 in the future if Europe follows the same direction. So I found that there was some connections there that were pretty fascinating. So your thoughts on this one?
Certainly not surprising. I mean, I've worked in transportation safety for a long time, so this is consistent with certainly, like we talk about with the safe systems approach and kinetic energy, and which is more vehicle mass and not necessarily the actual line of sight. But it's the New York Times article, the graphics, the interactive graphics in it were fantastic. Really, really powerful storytelling. Almost a little too real in terms of like the simulation of a person being struck by a taller vehicle and what happens. That was, I appreciate that they talked about the A pillar, they talked about the line of sight, they had great visuals. So I think it should be a required reading for everybody, every engineer out there.
Yeah,
certainly. And in the New York Times article, they also got into the economics of it, which was I hadn't seen that data before, which was really stark in terms of the profit margin on the SUVs and the pickup trucks is that much greater. So in trying to have a rational discussion with the automakers in terms of what is the reasoning behind these vehicles of these sizes, because we don't need vehicles of these masses, of this mass, from any real practical standpoint. But like so many things, it comes down to somebody's economics.
And cultural considerations too. I mean, the economics and the cultural part of driving each other, right? So people want larger vehicles. The car companies, because they want to feel like they're, in a bit better position than another person on the road. And so the car companies are like, they're more than happy to oblige them.
Happened to the 70s station wagon.
Exactly. Well, we made fun of it. That's the problem. That's part of the problem is we made fun of it instead of hailing it as
That's right.
a benefit. And then also, like the spokesman for Ford didn't really acquit themselves very well. While vehicle safety is critical, blaming larger vehicles for pedestrian deaths overlooks systemic issues. Well, what are those systemic issues? Tell me, what are the systemic issues? Yeah. And what's the built environment? Where did that come from? From pushing on car companies for people to drive more cars and all that stuff. So kind of ridiculous from that aspect. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the show. We talked about obviously the safe systems pyramid. We've had those the folks on Carrie and David Eder. It's just frustrating to see that we know that this happens. Like we know that the larger vehicles are dangerous to people. By the graphics, you see what happens when somebody gets hit by a vehicle. It's so much bigger than the smaller one. And there's not much, like you said, there's not much utility. The beds of the trucks are still about the same size, and in some instances they're smaller. So they can't carry as much stuff. And I do appreciate if you're in need of these things for work, it makes sense. If you need them to be able to do some of your recreational stuff, in some instances, that makes sense too to me. You're going to need stuff to haul things around. I mean, I can't say that I haven't benefited from my brother-in-law's truck from time to time because they can carry things. But at the same time, like they need to be made safer in a way that isn't reliant too much on technology. You shouldn't have to depend on the automated assist systems and stuff to make sure that you're not hitting a pedestrian.
I was going to say, and what the article doesn't talk about, and I haven't purchased a vehicle in a few years, but for many years, a lot of those safety features were not standard in like a base level model.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to get advanced safety features like pedestrian detection systems, you have to pay more money for the vehicle.
Yeah. But it also makes it more expensive, right? Like if you just had a vehicle that didn't need all these bells and whistles and stuff, then it wouldn't be as expensive. And so we wouldn't have this problem. And we've designed a lot of the United States, unfortunately, for, needing a car. And so if you don't have a car, you're left out of society. You're required to have one, just like soon enough, it seems like we're going to be all required to have cell phones. And so what happens is that we've built this built environment where you're required to have a car, and then we make it too expensive for you to own a car. And so we have that big affordability problem. And then, what comes after that is that like you have these larger vehicles that are more expensive, which means the parts are more expensive to replace, which means your insurance is higher. And so it gets more expensive to maintain your vehicle after you purchase the vehicle. And so the affordability argument continues to go up and up and up and up, and gets frustrating as well. And then also there's a design aspect of this too, which is we have a vision of what a car looks like in our minds. And with the advent of electric vehicles, we actually might be able to like reconsider that, because you don't need an engine in the front to drive the vehicle. You could have a battery and the motors can be on the wheels. And so now we can have a discussion about like, well, what could these vehicles actually look like if they're safer? And there's a little bit of that in like the design of the new mail truck, right? The low profile, the larger window ability. You could have Richard Scarry style, like, visibility. And so, we have an opportunity now if we're going to have vehicles, which I think that they're going to be persistent and will, be around for a while. Why don't we design them better? Why don't we have them be safer? And as the Ford engineer spokesperson stated, there are systemic issues, but it's funny coming from the Ford spokesperson. But part of it is vehicles, and then part of it is like the roads and that we drive on, and the designs and where we put. We had Eric Dumbaugh on recently, and he talked about his research, which showed where we put our strip malls and where we put our big box stores actually makes a big difference, because people are going to be crossing streets to get to those destinations, and where they cross the streets creates the conflicts. And so we have a lot of work to do in designing community in a way that reduces the impact of faster driving, of the kinetic energy that's generated from these larger vehicles, from the speeds that they drive, from the weight of them, all that stuff. And we have an opportunity to design something different. But the human brain, it makes it hard because people are often freak out. We saw this recently with the redesign that Joni Ive did and I'm not a fan of Joni Ive because of what he did to the Apple campus, but he redesigned the Ferrari recently, right? And so the electric Ferrari, and people flipped out. People flipped out because they're like, this isn't a Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari would be rolling in his grave. And so when people start, when you change something, people have a hard time with that. And so there's got to be some way to like gradually bring people into the safety century, as it were.
Well, you mentioned electric vehicles, but even thinking about autonomous vehicles, I think Waymo, when we see other models out there, you don't need a driver's seat. There's a lot of things you don't need any longer. To your point, in terms of changing the design of the vehicle, what is a vehicle? I mean, maybe we'll all eventually just be Wally's crawling, connected little pods.
It all goes back to Wally.
It always goes back to Wally. But I guess in terms of thinking about technology and design, in the article touches on it a little bit, the focus of automotive designers have largely been on the safety of the persons within the vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to the safety of people outside the vehicle. I remember when I went to Denmark several years ago and I had a couple of meetings with government officials and researchers over there, and we were talking about vehicle design, and they were talking about commercial vehicles or lorries and the requirement to have a low window, the way the windows were designed on the passenger side of the vehicle, and so that to increase, to reduce the blind spots
Mm-hmm.
for right-hand turns for the thinking about the people outside the vehicle. And you hear it and you're like, oh, it's why is it so hard?
Because the industry lobbyists.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it is, because the NHTSA has known this for a long time, right? And they've started, in the Biden administration started talking about that stuff, but
although
now
the 2022 reference in here is during the Biden administration when
no. I mean, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
but there was this discussion that started about the safe
Yes.
systems approach and
Yeah.
starting to think about car design and things like that. But you got to start it, and then you have to finish it. And then if it gets ping ponged around between administrations every time, then that's not helping anybody. And then if the industry has too much say over, the safety requirements, right now they're causing their own problems too by creating all these huge vehicles, and then only a certain subset of the population can afford them, and so they might have to start thinking about these things a little differently soon, anyways. But that's a whole other issue. But I agree, like the design stuff is and designing for people outside the vehicle is important, because that's what we're seeing a lot of the deaths happening, and the increase that, like you said, that stat at the beginning. What is it? Since 2009, pedestrian deaths have increased by 75%. And this last year, the deaths on roads have gone down infinitesimally,
right?
But not
on the roll.
On the way, it's not the things that we'd like to see. More safety, pedestrians not hit, cyclists not killed, those types of things. So. Completely frustrating. On the European side, though, is interesting too, and they're talking about this research organization who is often puts out news briefs and research briefs and stuff like that. They're saying basically, like, even Europe has grown. They're trying to resist some of the American influence by not allowing certain vehicles in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But they're saying that even they should be right-sizing things. The SUVs have gotten a little bit big, and some cities are taking care of this on their own. Like in Paris, you get an extra parking fee if your vehicle is too big,
right?
Those types of things. So there looks like a possibility of them trying to legislate it correctly, but again, there's still a need to reduce or to right size, like they're saying, and so they're on it, but we'll see if actually anything comes of it, because getting a whole bunch of people to go in the same direction is obviously always hard.
Like many things, it requires a multi-pronged approach. It's it's policy, it's vehicular design, it's roadway design, it's there are aspects of human behavior too. So it's what can we do to try to, like you said, give everybody pointed in the right direction. And to me, it's like, what is the value of human life?
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, not much. It is what the evidence shows with those outside the vehicle.
Yeah, we're not taking care of that. All right, well,
wow. Let's go back to talking about Dutch kids.
Let's talk about Dutch kids, or yeah. Well, this one's a positive too. Reduced air pollution in London. A study out of Imperial College London has found that nitrogen air pollution, mostly from cars, in the city has fallen 40%, while particulates have fallen 28% since 2019. Deaths from air pollution have also fallen 40%. The areas with the highest concentrations of deaths were outside parts of the city where the ultra-low emission zone existed, but now has been extended to. This was by Gwyn Topham in The Guardian. I feel like this is a really big deal. Like, air pollution is really bad. It affects people's health. It's linked to Alzheimer's, dementia, all kinds of respiratory and cardiac issues. Cleaner vehicles clearly will make this better. But also, more active transportation and people just not driving at all, because there are particulate aspects of this too, from tires and stuff like that. Right. But I feel like this is a step in the right direction, and it kind of proves that Sadiq Khan in London has the right idea, and his reasoning for all this going after this is his own asthma, and he's pushing on this pretty hard, and it's resulted in some seriously good air quality. Well, they still say that there's a problem with air quality, and I believe them, but it's reduced, right? So I should retract that. I'm not gonna say seriously good air quality because there's still problems, but reduced emissions is always a good thing.
I haven't kept up with the articles on the congestion pricing in New York City, but I hope and I assume, knowing the public health researchers in the area, that they're doing some analyses regarding changes in air quality in that area as well, because this is related to London's congestion pricing
Yeah,
program as
they
well.
have some serious sensors that they are sharing with the health department. They've taken some of their data. We had Stephen Krim on the show actually talk about all the data collection and stuff of congestion pricing. He's with the MTA, and so it was interesting to hear him talk about like all the things that the data that they were collecting and the befores and afters and all that stuff. So I know that they're looking at this very seriously, and they have a lot of those sensors in place. I wish, we often during the wildfires and stuff, I don't know if you do this, but there's the purple sensors, and those aren't quite as sensitive as the ones that the health department has put up. So they're going to actually have some really pretty good readings. But the purple sensors are good for just kind of a general overall. But I wish we had that ability to have those really sensitive ones everywhere, so you could see where the hotspots are for a lot of this car pollution from the nitrogen oxide and stuff like that. Because it would be really interesting to see where the reductions actually happen. They do have them, but just like, they're expensive, and so they're not everywhere. There are a lot of places, but they're not going to be everywhere. So I'd love to see more air sensors in more places, kind of like that purple air sensor. Because when in San Francisco, at least, when there's a wildfire, you can see every little part of the city where there's a change in the winds because of the purple air sensors. You can tell where the air quality is getting better. And so it would be nice if we had that for all pollution, if we could figure out how to set that up. But they do have some good sensors out, and there are a fair amount of them. But I don't know if it'll be as intricate as some of the stuff that we see during wildfires.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you said, it really great kind of cause and effect study, not an unintentional study, but I mean, they have research that they're talking about here, but to show what the impact of this policy is.
Yeah. Do you ever think about this? When I drop off Core at school, I take the bus over the hill, and I walk home from Castro Street to where we are. It's I don't know, it's probably like maybe like a 3/4 of a mile walk. It's not too bad, but it's kind of nice, but it's on the main commercial street, and I often, it's a pretty heavily traveled corridor for like the tech buses that go to Silicon Valley. There's the 48 bus that goes down there. There's a lot of vehicles that are kind of, delivery vehicles that are dropping stuff off at the Whole Foods in the morning. And I can just see like, not the air necessarily, but I could just see I could feel the pollution in my mind's eye that's there. And so it makes me think like, is this not good, me walking down this street every day with all these idling cars and delivery trucks and all that stuff? Like, am I exposing myself to more pollution than maybe is necessary from that respect, because we don't have enough electric vehicles, like all the semi trucks that are going to the Whole Foods and whatnot? And so I am thinking about that more as I move through the city on foot or on bike, just because of all the discussions that I've seen in my news articles, which it's not super healthy to read so many negative news articles every day, because then you start thinking about this stuff on your walk. But do you like think about this when you're like walking around?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do. There's lots of like environmental factors and negatives that come from vehicular traffic. And again, like we talked about, there's plenty of research that's associated that has found that like schools that are in, under the flight path LAX, or, kids that are growing up along truck routes. And it's not just air quality, it's noise pollution. It's, it's lots of, I think about it sometimes more even from a noise pollution standpoint as opposed to an air quality standpoint. Just the the kind of the racket
Mm-hmm.
of a street and
The din.
what's the level that I can tolerate it or zone it out. Um,
I
yeah.
noticed I
So
noticed that the other morning actually. I walked out of the house and it was kind of a foggy overcast, and I walked out and it was like quiet, like super quiet. And I was like, whoa, this is different. And it
yeah.
was early, so it was like, the sun had just come up and I was going to grab something, and I just noticed it. And then later on, somebody on a motorbike just ran by, and I was like, well, that ruins that. that was that was a nice morning, but then
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then all the racket started, right? And so it just like the regular hustle and bustle started. And I was like, cars and vehicles create a lot of noise, like a lot of
Yeah.
like noise. You don't really realize it, but a lot of the noise pollution that happens in cities is because of
Which
all
would be
this
another
running
interesting
around.
thing to measure. I mean, again, that this article focuses on the air quality, but how has um, noise pollution changed with this policy? And, we talk about New York City as well with congestion pricing. And is that something else that they've measured over time and talked to people about?
Yeah. I mean, it is tires. Like electric vehicles going fast, it still creates a pollution from the tires. We know during the pandemic that we had some good days,
Yeah.
during when everybody's on lockdown. There was an unfortunate part of that, but then I guess a positive-ish side effect that was like you could hear the birds and all that stuff, and it was
Yeah.
fairly good sounding, I guess, if
Hmm.
quiet is good sounding to people. So yeah, that would be interesting to see like how much maybe this ultra low emission zone has like reduced the noise pollution too,
Hmm.
because some of these
Hmm.
big diesel trucks and stuff, they make a lot of noise, right?
Yeah. You remember, I can't remember if you one or 2 years at UT, I taught a transportation and environment course. I was just starting to dig into that a little bit, which was
Mm-hmm.
super fascinating. Then I moved on and wasn't teaching there anymore. But it was an area that I wish I had gotten into a little bit more, because just even like thinking about like airports and how sound travels and
Mm-hmm.
the vectors of sound and what affects those is really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a couple of episodes on Talking Headways about sound specifically, and like how you design sound and positive sound, not just
Mm-hmm.
not just negative sound, but positive sound. There could be positive
Mm-hmm.
aspects to sound too, and also just kind of like how your ear actually works, right? Like what sounds
Mm-hmm.
permeate, what doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
like what your why it's hard to like have. I feel like I think it was Burdick. He was on the show and he was talking about like in his book, he was talking about like implants that you can put in, or like hearing aids and stuff, and like they can't work because the way that the human ear is so tuned to like different noises in different places. If you're in a restaurant, the
Mm-hmm.
hearing aids just don't work. They just don't work,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
because there's so many different noises, and your ears are so specifically tuned to like filter things out and
Yeah.
are evolved enough to figure it out that it's really, really like impressive actually, the human
Yeah.
body. So
Yeah. I did want to say, speaking of prior episodes, your episode on Sidewalk Nation,
uh-huh.
that was great.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. I thought it was a really uh, good discussion and touches on a little bit of work that we've done in the past or tried to dabble. Well, we did a project for the city of West Sacramento a few years ago. They have it's called STEP, the Sidewalk Transportation Equity Program, and we did a full inventory of their sidewalk. With them, we did an inventory of their sidewalk network and then looked at where the gaps were and everything, but got into that discussion of, well, who pays for this? And just
Mm-hmm.
that idea of that's an equity question in and of itself. Like so many municipalities, as your guest that day talked about, that push the cost of sidewalk construction and or maintenance onto the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't equitable.
Yeah.
It was it was a great episode. So it's certainly a topic that's close to my heart and
Yeah. Michael he was
interest.
a really great guest, and that's been a popular book in the bookshop site actually.
Yeah, when you were talking about the bookshop earlier, I was like, oh, I got to
Yeah.
get that book. I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Sidewalk
I was like,
Nation.
I'm not going to order it to move it,
Yeah.
but when I get to Austin, I'll.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was really great.
Yeah.
and has been thinking about this really deeply. And also, I mean, you think about sidewalks and the costs and how they're shared and who is responsible and all those things and legal liabilities and whatever else that we talked about on the show. It also makes me think that, like, we continue to do these things where we promote, single family housing and like kind of sprawling development, and the roads and the sidewalks are expensive. There's always discussion about like whether, if you can't afford it, then could anybody afford it? Like, is our system set up to, support that much infrastructure if we can't really pay for it ourselves? And so that's an interesting question too, is like the cost of sprawl type of question of it all. So yeah, that was a good one. Michael did a great job. And I've seen his face popping up a lot more because there's been more interviews with him. So it's really good to have him on early on. All right. This week and every week, I want to thank our generous Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome and keep the show going by listening and supporting each month. This show and Talking Headaways really wouldn't be here without you. So thank you very much. And you can support the show by going to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. $2 a month will get you some stickers and a handwritten note. $10 a month will get one of our scarves. $1 a month, of course, will get you no ads on your podcast. And we really appreciate those who have supported at the $10 or above level: Andrew, Ben, Derek, Gabriel, Glenn, Greg, James, Jeremy, Jim, Joseph, Catherine, Mal, Marcus, Matthew, Mike, Nicholas, Abraham, Oliver, Steve, Abby, Matthew, Sylvia, and recently added Andrew A. Thank you so much to everybody who supports us through Patreon and all of the places where you support us, even if you just listen to the show. Also, this is up next is listener questions and comments. This is a part of the show where we talk about anything that came into the mailbox. And so this week I have one item. And I'll try to get through it it's fairly involved, which is great. But I'll skip through a couple of things that don't need to be too detailed. But hi, Jeff. I want to share some thoughts about the recent episode. For artwork, there are several different pieces of software that will allow you to open old Adobe files and create new images. And they list a number of different things. Aside from, we talked last time about how Adobe is really rough with their subscriptions now. You can't just buy like the software and have it forever. You have to do a $30 a month subscription. So that's what I used to use. And so apparently there's a bunch of more that Mari has been telling me us about. And also they suggest that we have a design contest for the train-based scarf. Share dimensions and color requirements and see what folks send in. There's a lot of spam and AI nonsense on Fiverr to let us know, just FYI. They also talk with us about company towns and have some notes about, I'll put some of these notes in the show notes. There's a PBS American experience about mines and coal camps, and also Appalachian coal company towns in Appalachia are a thing too. Interested in the discussion about California Forever. And so I haven't really talked about that much lately, and they say thank you, Mari. California Forever is really interesting. I saw an article recently this week that they're trying to get some lobbyists to go to the state and help them with their shipbuilding enterprise. I am kind of torn on it because I think it's a good idea to build new cities, but at the same time, I don't like the idea that billionaires are going to capture all the value that's created by the people that live there, which is going to be like something I feel like the state should do, or the state should have a part in, rather than, the billionaires buying up a bunch of land and then, basically getting all the value out of it. So I guess that's a frustration for me. Some of the folks I know that are working on it are really smart people, but also like I find that some of the connections that are being made between San Francisco and Sacramento and this middle ground are lacking. I feel like it's going to be a highway oriented place. Maybe the internals will be walkable and bikeable, but the rest of it is just going to be where people are going to go get their jobs. Maybe some of it is going to be at the shipyard, but that they might build, but that's a frustrating thing too. So anyways, I've thought about it a little bit. I don't have like a big thing about it. I am frustrated that they were going to go for a vote and then decided not to and decided to get annexed. And so the people don't have as much of a say as maybe they did before, trying to get some fast tracking things going on. I don't know. There's a lot of like contentious stuff about it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, or you just want to skip it and go to the Bubbies and Butterflies.
I actually haven't read anything recently on California Forever, but certainly the reference to company towns makes me think of SpaceX and what they're doing in Texas around where they're building and growing there, that it really is becoming a company, certain aspects of company townness are happening in that region.
Yeah, it's all tied to that specific industry.
Yeah, as we're talking about billionaires and stuff.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of other stuff related to the billionaires that are trying to build California forever. That's frustrating. Mark Andreessen specifically. So yeah, I feel like a lot of those folks just like get lucky and are ruthless, and it's not really a measure of intelligence. But that may be just me. Puppies and Butterflies is part of the show where we talk about something fun and interesting, or maybe it just didn't fit in the other sections. Tracy, do you have a Puppies and Butterflies for this week?
I was just thinking about this before we got on the call, and I'll say, I think my Puppies and Butterflies is actually puppies. What my husband is in California and LA, like all summer on a work project, and we're here in Flagstaff, and so you're not seeing each other very often. He's also not getting his dog fix because the dogs are here. So, like actual puppies, I'm getting more dog videos. Like every day, I'm getting some YouTube video of some compilation, whether it's, is it the dodo or I don't know. It's just every day dog videos, funny dog videos. What are these dogs doing?
Yeah.
So I don't have an actual Puppies and Butterflies story or article to talk about.
Puppies themselves are puppies and butterflies, right? I mean, we love puppies.
It does
here.
make me smile because sometimes, like you were saying, the news is heavy.
Yeah. I like that aspect of, there is lots of stuff against scrolling, but there's also some mental benefits, I think, from some of the positive stuff.
That did make me think of an actual news article about the animal. Did you read about Gracie the giraffe in the Texas Hill Country that escaped and was wandering around for a few days?
Yes, but survived.
Yes. Yep.
That's good. Yeah. I hope it wasn't too hot for them. I'm sure. Well, I mean, I guess living in the zoo in Texas is probably hot anyways, but they might have some place to kind of hang out in a tall
it took them 3 days to find Gracie, so she was hiding out somewhere.
Yeah, it must have been. How do you hide out with such a long neck? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's good. My one is just the World Cup continues.
Yes.
Right before we recorded this, I don't know the answer, and by the time that this is out, you'll know who won between Germany and Paraguay. It looked like it was going to penalty kicks. But I just love like all the like cool stories that FIFA, the Olympic Committee, all the junk that goes with that, like forget it. Like those guys, they're all corrupt jerks in politics and whatever else. But this thing happens, and so there's so many people that have so much joy and fun, and all talking about all the Scottish tourists that went to Boston and drank all their beer, and they ran out. All of the different nationalities that were actually that have allowed to come in the country. That's another issue entirely as well. That's a bummer. The visa issues for certain super fans and things like that have been frustrating. But the ones that have been able to come into the country and create a positive atmosphere, I think that's been really great. The Dutch fans are in Mexico right now, doing their thing in the streets, and I just love that part of it. Before I remember like Italia '90 was my first like World Cup that I actually paid attention to. I had it on tape. My mom and I taped every one of them on TNT. They had commercials in the middle still, like they stopped. They didn't stop play. They just played a commercial when the game was still playing.
You came back and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened?
Yeah, well, that's what happened a couple of times. Is they scored a goal.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I remember from that one was like the whole thing was like they were having games on like Corsica or something like that to where like so the English hooligans couldn't get to the island to watch the game, and so they had like these passport restrictions and all this crazy stuff because at the time it was like hooliganism was such a big thing. And now I feel like I see less stories about that and more stories about joy and like togetherness and like even like the Japanese fans cleaning up the stadium afterward. Just like the joy that comes out of it is just really great, and I love that. And obviously there's some heartbreaking moments because your team lost. But in the end, it's all about sports and it's all about competition in a healthy way. That's not war and violence. And so I appreciate that a lot. And so I will always have a soft spot in my heart for the World Cup and soccer and at the world stage for this reason. Same with the Olympics, just the healthy competition aspect of it. And just knowing also what went into it, how much time you spent to get there. Like, I know. But it's just like, you spend some of these players, they spend their whole lives dedicated to getting to this spot. And when one of them scores a goal or gets just like, or the goalkeeper from Cabo Verde, who's 40 years old and, gets to get to the World Cup and just like, it changes everything. So it's just such a heartwarming thing. So anyways, that's my puppies and butterflies.
I love it.
So. Tracy, where can folks find you if you wish to be found?
They can find me on LinkedIn. That is where I am nowadays.
Awesome. You can find me on Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Instagram, sometimes Threads, Substack, YouTube, not Twitter. And of course, on my website and in your inbox every morning if you sign up for the newsletter. And on Flickr, I am Transit Nerds. Everywhere else is at The Overhead Wire. You can also find my writing at the Overhead Wire blog, or I sometimes cross-post that to the free version of Patreon, which folks can sign up to Patreon for free as well. If you want to get some of those posts, and Substack too. There's too many places these days to post stuff. I know. I'm so annoyed.
I will say I started looking at Instagram. Like I have an Instagram account that I rarely use, and I started using it a little bit more because when we were at the CSU orientation last week, they were talking about all the ways to follow the university, blah, 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 and everything. And I'm like, okay. But then I had to have Angus sit down with me like, okay, I don't know how to use this anymore. I've been off it since I got off it in like 2017.
They change it so much.
Yeah. So that was a long time ago.
Oh my gosh.
Almost a decade ago. So I need to.
I'm annoyed. I'm getting into this old person thing where I'm annoyed at change now. I'm grumpy. They changed my shoes. I can't buy the same shoes anymore. The Nike Free 2018s are no longer, and so you have to buy the new ones, and they're not as good to me. Anyways, I'm grumpy about that type of stuff, like change stuff. Should all stay the same forever.
That's right. Wow, you are.
Yeah,
grumpy old man.
Yeah, grumpy old man. Yeah. Thanks for joining us at Mondays at the Overhead Wire. Thanks to our generous patrons for supporting this week's podcast. Thank you, Tracy, for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Awesome. And we'll see everybody next time.
Talk